when we do the introduction, just go ahead and introduce yourself if you want to talk about your religious identities and just share a little bit about your journey and your sexual identity and your gender orientation.
Cool. Okay. Nick Green. I identify as Christian. Active member of my church. I identify as I don't really put so I used to say bisexual, but then so I generally say I identify as queer because I don't particularly feel like I fit in sometimes just one particular spot.
Hmm.
Um, I, I've had, you know, I've had relationships and experiences all up and down the spectrum. And so therefore I don't feel like I want to limit myself by saying I'm one particular thing. I think we're now starting to get to a place um, in our community where we're looking at people more than just, you know, if you had this experience, you have to be gay. I feel like a reckoning is coming up on that particular
Hmm.
area, um, just because there are so many people that are now, especially post COVID. I I'll even say for me, post COVID, whenever we got through the pandemic, and I said I I feel this call to be more open to being myself and who I actually am because
Hmm.
if if God allowed me to make it through this with all of the other things that I have going on, why not?
Yeah, yeah, I feel
And
that.
that's obviously, the grace of the situation that you've been given this opportunity when so many others weren't. And so I
Hmm.
was like, well, if that's the case, I have to be more freely be me. And I think many more people, especially within our community, are having those same type of conversations and revelations because so many of our loved ones did pass away during COVID.
Hmm. 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 And I appreciate you like bringing that up because I feel like we don't have these honest conversations in the Black community, especially as Black men,
Right.
and I feel like me as a queer, well, I go by bisexual.
Okay.
And I think that that's a little bit taboo in the trans community because, there is a lot of transphobia within our own trans community, And so I feel like sometimes the biphobia is very real within our own community. And so to just be able to be comfortable saying that I'm a bisexual trans man, that's a real thing. And having that conversation around surviving through COVID, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We really had to find our own sense of community, and being able to find those people we could be authentically ourselves with. Uh, I was still going through my transition during COVID and stuff like that. And during that time, I was outed at one of my jobs. And so I was actually laid off for 4 months. That was my first time ever being off of work and
Wow.
stuff like that. And so it was a real hit for me in that time. So I think that was a conversation that a lot of us was left out of like how we found that sense of community during that time.
Yeah.
Hmm. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Problem.
So, with that being said, tell me about a time when you felt seen and supported as a queer person in the community.
Um, First time I felt seen and supported as a queer person, um, in the community,
Mm-hmm.
or okay, I would definitely say, um, after moving here and actually after joining TGA, outside of really, the the club scene, come especially, and just sort of getting together with two or three others coming from a smaller, more rural community, there really is no community. It's a couple of people that you say, oh well, he's gay, she's a lesbian. You're able to honestly and rural communities, we know, of course, there's way more, but those that are actually out, it's generally a handful of people.
Hmm.
Um, and so coming here really allowed me the opportunity to feel a community, to feel love, to feel that for me and my queerness,
Mm,
me at you know because that hadn't really been an opportunity I had had before.
okay. All right. So was there like a particular like moment that was like that stands out for you?
A particular moment that stands out for me. I can't do the one that stands out for me the most. Let me pick out another one. And I'll tell you why offline. So I would say just the opportunity. Okay, here's the biggest moment. Here's same time period, same weekend. My father came to church on Easter Sunday, 2024, I think it was. And so, of course, this was the first time he had been to TGA, and it was and one observation that he made um, was that those women really know how to praise God, and I bet you it's because they were in a place at one point where they didn't have that opportunity or that space, and that sort of changed the way that I looked at us, seeing that so many of us are there because other people have abandoned us, other people have left us out to dry. um I would definitely say that that whole conversation, that whole thought process in itself taught me how to see that just us being able to get together is an example of love. The greatest example, one of the greatest examples of love, because there's so many people that wouldn't want us to be able or wouldn't expect us to be able to do that.
Hmm. Yes, I love that. I love that. So you're a father as well, right? Okay. And you're also a teacher.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So can you tell me a little bit about how you feel like your identities kind of shape your parenting?
Um, yeah. Because having to have open and honest conversations with your child is tough. Um, because you know it it was a change for her, even though was she was too young to remember when me and her mother were together. But
Hmm.
she's between me and her, and then at one point I was living with my father. So just also around the concept of teaching, daddy's in a relationship, these are expectations with his partner, and if somebody should ever say anything or do anything around this, you need to say something so we can
Hmm.
handle
Yeah. Yeah.
it. That has been a learning curve. But I would even add to that, it's interesting seeing people's reactions whenever both me and DJ have to come and pick up Priscilla or something, because they're not expecting two big men to come pick up this little teeny tiny girl. And when we first moved here, we were going to One Life, and so we would first couple of times that we went there and dropped her off at Kids Club, we just sort of both walked in together and just sort of took up all the space. And they're like, and it's like, who do you need? It's like, I need Priscilla. And
Yeah.
then, and then once they got the idea, oh, that's her people, or that's her dad's, they really, it got a lot more comfortable. Those first couple of times was really like, both of you are here.
Yes.
You want this one little girl? Why are both of you here? Uh,
And both of you are like tall because I
right.
I just feel like and I love it because like when I get a hug and both of you just like so tall and you just love on everybody and I just know like seeing that in that space, just both of you just being amazing father figures in that space. I just love that, just all of that representation in that space, loving on that little black girl, like so how do you feel in those spaces with her being able to be that representation? Um, what do you feel about that like now, seeing that we didn't really have a lot of that?
Right. Um, I, being that representation is, it's, and being here is a lot different.
Yeah,
When
it's
we
that
were
double-edged sword.
right, one of the things I learned here recently is that they considered back in the day Norfolk the Harlem of the South.
Mm,
And so, Harlem, for its benefit, was very progressive on how on its views of people and sexuality. And while we know
hmm
Norfolk is still in the South, for the most part, we're in a very progressive area where, back home, if me, him, and her were out, we might have got to look like, you know, here it's not really good. It doesn't really happen. Those interactions of, oh, it's both of you. Were, I think they were because of our size and our stature versus, oh, it's two men, together.
hmm
There, we've taken her to activities, and so this is my partner DJ, and we are respected as just as everybody else. And while
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you know at home, honestly, because of who I was and sort of the positions and stature that I had, I don't think anybody would ever say anything to my face. I'm
hmm
quite sure that there would be stuff said behind my back.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You know how in our community we have a lot of ableism, we have fat phobia, we have, the lookism, you name it, we have it in the community, you
Right.
know. And I feel like a lot of times, especially when it comes to the church, they use a lot of that to push that narrative and they use it as respectability politics. Do
Mm-hmm.
you feel like that's what keeps a lot of us at a church?
Almost definitely. Because we created this respectability politics, as you called it, and so back in the day, you came there to meet God, but there was like so many other issues. I mean, think about, not maybe not our parents' generation, but those old folks. They had children here, there, all over town. A child with this woman that everybody knew about was their child, and
Yeah.
that that's even speaking to one of my grandfathers. You know,
hmm
and he was, guess what? He was the head deacon at church.
hmm
So I
And see, and
mean,
that's the thing is like,
this whole idea that he, that he shouldn't be allowed to be a deacon because he did things in his past. I mean, that's what's keeping so many of our people our age out, because everybody is willing to say, oh, we'll forgive you, but nobody's actually willing to let the past be the past and let
exactly.
people become new creatures in Christ.
Exactly. Exactly. And I feel like we don't know how to have real transparent conversations. Um, and I love that. we're getting to a better space of talking about, mental health in our community.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like our generation is definitely trying to do the work of undoing the harm.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
We're trying our
um,
best to.
yes.
But it's hard. I would say for us, it's hard not because um not because the access isn't there. I think for us, it's finding, how can I put it? Finding making the time to take care of yourself in that particular way, I think is the hardest thing for our generation. The
Hmm.
access is there, but we actually have to step through the door at times. Um, I and it's not, I wouldn't say that the phobia is behind it anymore. It's just really actually finding the time, but I told my daddy, maybe you need to seek some therapy. Oh, I took therapy back in the 80s. I don't need to take it anymore. Oh, okay. Thanks.
And I think it's still this fear that they have of like what used to happen back then, and that distrust. And
Right.
don't get me wrong, there is still a lot of misinformation. There's still a lot of growing to do. But I feel like because of all of the distrust and all of the manipulation that happened in the healthcare system before, that our parents still have like this distrust and they don't believe us when we're like, hey, this medicine can't help. Like, this lady do
Yeah.
know what she's talking about a little bit here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, my question to you is, how do you practice self-care for yourself?
I I practice self-care by listening to my body and trying to regulate days. So also background knowledge, I have an autoimmune condition. I
Same.
have I have ankylosing spondylitis, and so therefore some days my joints hurt. So it's a form of arthritis. So some days my joints hurt and I don't feel like moving, or some days, I just may be extremely fatigued.
Hmm.
I, it's forced me to actually stop and provide myself like, okay, I need to stop. I need to listen to my body. I don't need to do this event. I don't need to maybe I don't need to go to work that day, or maybe once my I get to a point where my body is feeling better, okay, I can push myself a little bit harder. I that because also if you listen to your body and then you proceed to do nothing after it's better, that becomes worse on you. So
Hmm.
also part of your self-care and listening to your body is saying, okay, I'm ready to move to the next level. I can push myself a little bit further. Uh,
Okay. Yeah. I love that. I feel like we're kind of in the same boat. I have lupus.
okay.
So I totally understand that because my body is starting to, I may be 37, but my body think that it's 87. You feel me?
Oh, me too. Same. 37 going on 70, as I like to call it.
Very much that. And I feel like a lot of people don't understand when you have an invisible, disability that, like, we have those days, and so, like, what is something that you would like to share that people don't really understand when you have an invisible disability,
I would definitely say the we hate the ability to our or not our, the ability, the need to drop things at the last moment as much as you do, and it's just as much a convenience to us as it is to you.
Yes, yes.
I think so, especially here lately. I feel like I've been going through a flare since probably, and this was probably since November. Just sort of people getting the idea, oh well, he's iffy if he shows up. I'm iffy if I show up because I've got to listen to my body.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me
Yes.
I can't go, I can't go. Past couple of months, I push myself to get out the house, and I say if I can push myself to get out the house to work, and I can try to push myself to get out the house to go to other things. But anything virtual has been my friend because after I get home from work, some days I'm just like, I'm not moving anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
also about making hard, conscious decisions.
Hmm.
If I go out on Saturday and I go out and do a whole bunch of stuff, I'm not getting up at 8:30 on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Like I want to be able to get up and go out, get up at 8:30 on Sunday morning. I've got to have a chill day on Saturday. Knowing those things about yourself and being unapologetic about it.
For sure. Yes. Yes. I love that. I love that. Come on with it. I think that's the part that I'm learning is the unapologetic part. I think for me is very much, being a dad and that expectation of us as black men. We know that the expectation is very high, especially being in an environment, you have a young daughter, we're always in protective mode. And so giving ourselves that grace to take a break, I think sometimes we forget to be kind to ourselves. And I'm learning, I'm in that era of learning that. Um, and I've heard some very ableist things, around the lupus community and around very invisible disabilities. So I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you. Um, so yeah, so I would like to say, how do you feel that you show up as your authentic self in your work environment? Um, how do you feel like you're able to show up in your work environment?
Um, in my work environment as my authentic self.
Yes, because I love your Facebook.
Uh, you know, all of it is very much just trying to keep pace and keep sanity. You know, I teach seventh grade social studies. I have been in the education
Six,
sector.
seven.
Right, 6, 7, automatically I say 7. I've been in education for 14 years. Let's see, a year and a half of the 14 was spent as a organizer for a year of it was spent with in North Carolina Association of Educators. Half of a year was spent with National Education Association, actually working for them versus being in the classroom. But
Mhm.
all 14 years have been in some form of education. Um, and so in my 14 years, you know, when I first started, well, my mother passed my senior year of college, and I
Yeah.
went to college to be a teacher, and my mother taught for 31 years. And so she never got to see me actually teach. But before I started teaching, she's like, "Are you sure this is what you want to do? Are you sure this is what you want to do? Because it ain't what it used to be." My mother started teaching in 1978. It ain't
Oh
what
wow.
right. It ain't what it used to be.
Hmm.
You sure this is what you want to do? And so,
That was a
um,
whole different type of community back then.
whole different type of community back then. And so, um, I I often wonder what would she think of the students that we have now.
Mm,
But lots of her now, mind you, lots of her issues were the way that testing had taken over,
mm,
the way that they were changing how students were qualifying for and given special education services. Those were her gripes really at the time, but also then of course the pay. Um, and so keeping that in mind of how our students are today, everybody says, "Oh, these students are the worst I've ever taught. These students are the worst I ever taught." I wouldn't say that the kids I teach now are the worst I ever taught. I will say they are probably the least outside of reality.
mm,
It's hard trying to find ways to ground them in reality, when lots of time on thing they know is looking at videos on YouTube or TikTok or
hmm
or playing, some these days not even really sometimes playing the video games, but also playing video games. It's hard to ground them in the reality of you actually have to do work, you actually have to take responsibility, you actually have to you actually have to pay attention. Uh,
Yes.
they they haven't been grounded in that, and especially that for this group that we're in, it took a hit because of COVID, because they were at home and they were trying to
Mm-hmm.
learn for a whole year and a half, and they didn't have to pay attention if they didn't want to. To answer the question, I have to show up as a realist
Mm.
and as my authentic self. Um, and I've always historically been known as a realist. I mean, I got my handle on Twitter and on Instagram is at Mr. Reality 11, and I got that name, or at least Mr. Reality, in college because people would come to me for advice on who to vote for in an election, or if we were voting on a referendum, or if there was something going on in school. They would come to me because they knew that I would give them the realest, most down to earth perspective. Like these are the
Mm-hmm.
flat details. This is what's going on. Here's my perspective. You can do what you want to with that information, but this is what it is. That's me.
Mm-hmm.
And so providing that type of structure for seventh graders is extremely hard, but it has to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to show up to be my authentic self. I have to keep everything in the perspective of, I'm not going to tell you a lie. I'm not going to sugarcoat this for you. I'm going to tell you the truth, which also means curriculum wise, going past the curriculum, because they did switch up our curriculum where we have to tell things from all perspectives, the African American perspective, the European American perspective. What does this mean for these people? What does this mean for these people? I'm going to tell you exactly what it meant for each group. It may not be
Mm-hmm.
what they want to be
Mm-hmm.
said, but I'm gonna still keep it a band. If it's racist, we're gonna call it racist.
Yes.
If
Yes.
it's sexist, we're gonna call it sexist.
Mm-hmm.
If, is it queerphobia? We're gonna call it that. They so that's how I have to show up as my authentic self. But also grade wise, work wise, I'm constantly getting on them. It's time for y'all to take personal responsibility. You know,
Mm-hmm.
good for blaming everybody else, including you, for why they did what they did.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's never their fault. And so um trying to teach personal responsibility, that's still again coming from a realist perspective. You've got to be able to do what you're supposed to do to get what you need. Because these kids will come to school and say, "Oh well, first thing in the morning, I need a pencil," and it's not so much that I expect them to always come prepared. But when you come every day, and it's gotten to the
Mm-hmm.
point now, well, we just expect y'all to provide it for us.
Mm.
I Mama, they give us, and parents will come to school and say, "Well, they tell us that y'all give them all the paper, and we don't need to buy them any paper, or we don't." And y'all give them all like they tell them that, and they believe it.
Yeah. Yeah. So what is the conversations that you feel that parents should be having right now with their children?
Um, First, before they have the conversation, they should go and have their child log into the system so they can see their child's grades.
Mm.
I think that's the step that that lots of parents miss, is that they assume their child is doing fine because their child tells them they're doing fine, and they don't like to mess with the platform that they have for parents, because it can be pretty tricky. You got to remember a password, and the password's made by the school, and so just what so they just forget it. No, the first thing I always do at the parent teacher conference: When you get home, have your child log into, Synergy or Power School, because they know how to log into it because they have to log into it every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I've seen
Log
it
in,
firsthand.
have them log in so you can see what their grade book says, so you can get an idea of what their grades are before you have any type of conversation with them. Because that creates the dynamic and the understanding of the conversation that you need to be having. Are you taking personal responsibility? And for those that are doing what they need to be doing, the conversations need to be start being had around, what are you doing to do more? And here's why. Um, so many of our generation, especially those of us that were kids that got pretty good grades, either in, we were in, might have been in gifted program, might not have been in gifted program. If it won't gifted program, then you got this treatment at church. You were expected to do something more.
Mm-hmm.
If
Yeah.
it was, if you're going to church, then you may read the scripture or do the prayer, or maybe the announcements. I was a teenager doing all of those type things.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, maybe you're in a community organization, maybe you're in the youth council for the NAACP. Those things were expected of us whenever these kids that have great grades, great work ethic, and they go to school and they do that, and then they come home, they spend all afternoon on social media. So they're,
Mm-hmm.
social media wise, they're still not going any further. So it goes from, okay, you're taking personal responsibility. Now let's start talking about community.
Oh,
Nobody's
yes.
creating community leaders anymore. Nobody
Yeah.
is trying to encourage their children to build community. Um, so often I find myself preaching to my students, what about the community? They don't want to pick
Mm-hmm.
up a piece of paper. I didn't put that piece of paper down there. Well, can you pick it up for the good of the community? Can you pick
Yes.
it up for the good of the classroom, for the good of your classmates? They
Yes.
don't get that anymore at all. Why should I do that?
Yes.
Some will do it, but
Yeah. So, okay, so I love this conversation about community. And seeing that we were talking about, your mom inspired you to be a teacher, correct? And I love, like for me, I feel like Black women are the blueprint, very much the inspiration. So, what conversations do you feel like we should be having on creating communities right now, especially in the political climate that we're in?
and it's funny that you say about the blueprint. And my mother was in that first class of teachers that went in as special educators, because
Mm-hmm.
that was right after they had passed the the name of the I can't remember. They had passed the bill that created special education services.
Okay.
So she's in like the first class. So literally, there are things that she did as a special educator that did create the blueprint, because she was in that first set of people that were actually sitting down holding IEP meetings with parents, figuring out, well, these are the things that actually need to be in the document. Those women that did that, and those teachers that did that, we should really be thanking them, because now there are lots. There's some great teachers, and that do all the things they need to do to help students, and there's some there that we're following through with the paperwork, and that's what we're doing. And
Yeah.
so those blueprints are there. But so to the community, um hmm, it okay, pause. Let me refocus. Read the community part of the question for me again.
Oh, that was off the dome. Um,
What did you
so,
ask?
so basically, I just want to know, like, what conversations do you think that we need to have with our children today around how to start
Oh,
building community?
gotcha. Okay. So as far as these conversations we need to start having with our kids about creating community is you know, remembering that first off, that it's more than just self. I think the biggest mistake we made is, and I wouldn't say it's our generation. It's how can I put it? It's these kids that where I was teaching maybe 10 years ago, where their parents were arguing at them. Um, and so maybe it is the very beginning of millennials. Just worry about you. Don't worry about nobody else. Just worry about you. Just worry about you.
Yes.
That, that idea that we're just worrying about self and not trying to, make sure that our our neighbors are taken care of.
Yes.
And I would also say that hmm, it was this was what elections had to be 2020, 2024, maybe 2020 election. I had this interaction where I came up with this idea that, that hustle culture of later Gen X and early millennial has sort of messed up their children, because now
Mm-hmm.
all they're worried about is self and how much money can I make,
Mm-hmm.
versus actually trying to figure out how to better their community.
Mm-hmm.
And that came right from this interaction I had with some children that I had taught, and we were having this event in our community. We were doing it was it was election night, general election night, and we were doing we voted at the gym, and we had like different food trucks come, and so we had all this funding. So we were giving people, tickets to go and get the food truck on our behalf. We were paying the food trucks, that type of stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
so I went up to one of the food trucks, one of the mothers of one of the kids that I taught my first, maybe my third year teaching. She had got made a food truck. So all these kids were now, 18, 19, 20. They were grown. This was a couple years after I taught them. I go up there and I go to the window and I look at one of the ones I taught. Have you been up there to vote? What am I voting for? What do
Yeah.
you mean? I mean, what if I go over there and vote, what am I voting for? I said, you do realize this is an event for voting. And she was like, but I don't, Miss Green, I don't understand what. So we have not, we haven't made that connection that I'm here for my community and things that I need to do for my community. But I'm always seeing, oh, we're this place with the truck, we're that place with the truck.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're doing this, we're doing these events. And so hustle culture is toxic in a special way because it leaks down, because your children are going to emulate what they see you doing. And if you're not caring about your community and you're only worried about hustling,
Mm-hmm.
that's what your kids see.
Yes.
I think the later half of millennials, so pretty much later 80s to the mid 90s, we sort of saw the woe in that. It was like, okay, we gotta hustle, but we also gotta take some self-care. And I think
Mm-hmm.
we might have sort of self-corrected on that where others couldn't have.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so now it's really about not only teaching these kids, but also teaching the ones that they look up to,
Mm.
because their parents don't get it either.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones that have been preached that worry about self, worry about self.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to be having, not only conversations with these kids, but conversations with their parents. And so in my work as an organizer here in Norfolk, that has been one of my biggest things that I have had trouble encountering, Because there's a couple different factors. Norfolk has a tendency to be rather transient because you have the base. So you have
Mm-hmm.
people that only have to worry about this at 4 years at a time or whatever. Then you have other people that have been so browbeat by the system that they don't care.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then you have those in the hustle culture. And so it's hard getting people to see past their own little silos.
Yeah.
Um, that is that's another reason why I love going to TGA, because oh, you doing this project? You want to come do it here at TGA? You want to, do you want to do this? We're more than willing to collaborate and bring people in and hear different perspectives. Whenever I did the Hampton Roads Collective Bargaining Coalition Labor Day um, teach in and cookout, and we did it
Mm-hmm.
at TGA. That was bringing people in that had never been to our sanctuary before, but then it also brought something to TGA that we never really talked about before. I'm chair of social justice ministry, but I hadn't tried to bring anything labor related to
Yeah.
church.
Yeah.
And so that was really like knowing that we were able to transform to hear all these different ideas and make them a part of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
It's really nice because you don't get that everywhere.
For sure. For
But
sure. And I
we
love
also
that.
have an understanding of trying to build community,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and so that's what we're going back to. So
Yes. No, I love that. I love that. I think that that's the part that's missing, is like that disconnect of like, why aren't we building the communities anymore? And I think once we get to a space of like fixing those disconnects, we can start to build that community again. So yeah, I appreciate that.
good, because I'm the one that's not scared to say it. Thus, also going back to Mr. Reality, but that has helped me and that has hurt me. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm usually willing to stand by what I've said. I'll say, and I'll stand by it 10 toes down. You know, and so I find peace by especially for my community, um, by being willing to speak truth to power.
Yes.
Because if I if I know something that's gonna make a difference, or I see something that's not gonna make a difference, I'm one of those people that I can't sit on it, and it's gonna nag me until I do it. And I want
Mm-hmm.
it's like it just won't leave me alone. And so and it's become to the point where now, um by the time I've said something about it, I've thought about it, I've wrote it down, I've toyed with it, I've run it through Chat GPT, I've come up with a whole plan and a grant. Here, here is the thing that we need to do. and,
Right.
and so, sometimes that type of, that is appreciated. And then sometimes, people feel that, that you're overstepping, and it's just the ability to know that line for myself. But I I know peace once I've said what I've said.
Yeah.
Um, and also that's also a form of self care, because something's gnawing at you and eating at your spirit.
Yes.
You can't sleep, you can't do you know. So no, I don't. Why go through all of that? I may go through it for 1 or 2 nights, and then by the time I get to the third day, I'm
I gotta
trying to
say
make
something. I gotta say it's bothering my spirit.
it bother me. I got to say it. So yeah,
Yes, I love that. I feel like that's why we vibe, because we got the same type of spirit. I can't sleep, I can't eat if it's bothering my spirit. So
right.
I appreciate that. Is there anything else you would like to say before we close out?
I'm happy I had the opportunity.
All right. Well, I appreciate you so much. Thank you. I appreciate you so much. This was such a pleasure. I got to learn so much about you, and I really appreciate this. Thank you so much.